Shalom, I'm Moreh Matan, and welcome to this week's Moreh Minute. This week's Torah portion is called Yitro, which is how in Hebrew we say Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. Now, in the past, I have let you know that Jethro, who at one point was named Jether, if we pronounce it in English, was one of the advisors to Pharaoh. When there was a conversation between Pharaoh and his advisors about what should be done with the Jewish people, he was not in favor of enslaving them, and so he left, settling in Midian and becoming their high priest. So he comes from a pagan background, but converts to Judaism when Moses tells all that God did for them. That is also in this Torah portion, but the main passage that we like to focus on is the giving of the 10 Commandments, or as we say in the Jewish world, the 10 words or the 10 statements. If you were to count them up, depending on how you count, there are either 15 or 16 commandments in these 10 statements. But it's important for us to understand that these 10 statements correspond to the 10 statements at creation. There is a mirror image here, and that's very important for us to remember. Now, where I really want to park my boat today is in chapter 19, verse 3, and in chapter 19, verse 8 of Exodus. Today's commentary comes from Rashi, the Mechilta, and the Mechilta de Rashbi. In verse 3, it says, "Say to the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel." Now, there's a lot of this sort of stereo thinking, if you will, in the Bible. Hebrew loves symmetry. Hebrew is a mathematical language. It's a scientific language. It's an emotional language. It's really beautiful, the Hebrew tongue. Why does it say the house of Jacob and the children of Israel? Isn't this just repeating? Isn't this the same group of people? Sometimes people will say, well, Jacob is unrectified and Israel, as God changed Jacob's name to Israel, this is when he is more raising above that level, as we learn in our yeshiva, of Nefesh Be'emah and raising to Nefesh Hamaskelet. He is rectifying his soul and rising in divine consciousness, and we could go there. But in these particular commentaries, there is a different opinion. And it is that the first group, the house of Jacob, is the women, and that the second group, the children of Israel, is the men. Now, why separate women and men? Now, it's important to remember that the 10 words are spoken at Mount Sinai to the large group, to the men and the women. He doesn't separate them out. So this is an instruction to Moses on when you get into the land and you begin to teach the Torah, this is how you teach it. And there are a couple different explanations as to why you do this and how you do it. So why do we tell the women first? Why is this instruction given to Moses to tell the women first? Well, what Rashi says is women are more diligent in the following of the commandments. God puts them on a higher spiritual level than men naturally are. So women don't have to work as hard to get close to God as men do. Women aren't as easily distracted as men. You know, sometimes myself, being a man, I like to say that I'm multitasking doing something. I don't do it like my wife can do it. Women have a brain that can work in a multitasking way. Now, of course, I know I'm painting with a broad brush here and making generalizations, but if I were to get into deeper nuance, well, this lesson would take too long. So speak to the women first, to the house of Jacob, and then there is a way to speak to the women as well. It says that you can speak to a woman gently about the Torah, but with a man, you have to be blunt. Men have a harder time understanding the Torah and applying it, and as I said, men have bigger distractions, which is why men are given more visual commandments like tefillin and tzitzit, things like that, that women aren't obligated to do because we need these attention getters, as it were, to help us keep on track in our relationship with God. And listen, it doesn't make me feel bad or somehow inferior or anything like that to admit that men like myself need more order, need more structure, need less distraction. It's just the truth. It's just how we are wired in a general sense. The other thing I'd like to point out is in chapter 13, verse 8, where the crowd answers God, all that you have commanded us we will do. God says to them, okay, you're agreeing to do this, but I need some sort of guarantee. Who is your guarantor? And the children of Israel say, well, the heavens and the earth, they will be our guarantors. And God says, but they won't be around forever. Which reminds me in the New Testament, in the Brit Chadashah, where Yeshua says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So heaven and earth are not good guarantors. Then they say, well, our fathers will be the guarantors that we will keep this Torah. And God says, they're busy. And so finally they say, our children will be our guarantors. And then God says, these are good guarantors. You and I are guarantors for one another. We help one another out. Once again, I am Moreh Matan, and it's been my joy to be with you this week. If you'd like to sign up for Kosher Pastor, you can go to kosherpastor.com, or if you are African or of African descent, like my African American brothers and sisters, go to af.shuvu.tv and join the Uri program as you rise and shine and become a part of the house of Israel. Thank you once again. Shalom and Kol Tuv.